Welcome back, everyone. POW Ponder Weather here. We've got a big, severe weather risk happening over the next 2 days, so I wanted to bring the latest details on this morning's update. Here's the overall status. The newest update from the Storm Prediction Center does in fact still have that moderate to enhanced risk that has been expanded and shifted a little bit further off into the west. It does include much of central and north Texas, getting into east Texas, getting into the Arklatex regions. But I think storms start to initiate as far west as the Abilene area, and it becomes an overnight threat into the Arklatex into this evening time frame during kind of the wee hours of the morning. So let's really break down the details as far as the hazards are concerned. This is pretty rare, guys. This is a very high impact event. We've got a massive low level jet that's really going to be tapping into this warm sector starting around noon, 1, 2 o'clock time frame. These areas are at the highest risk to see some of those hatched large hail variety types, hailstones. These areas down here, I know there was a place down there in San Antonio last night that got up to baseball size hail, and it actually came through their roof. So this is some serious stuff with a lot of updraft potential. The large hail could be included anywhere along into central Texas, north Texas, getting into northeast Texas, as well as southeastern Oklahoma, and that hail threat just extends into the Arklatex all the way into the overnight hour, and we could see some hail all the way down into the Houston area. So this is a massive area that could see some hail later on this afternoon, as well as tornadoes. We do have a high impact event. Some of these are going to be strong tornadoes. It could be even some possible long track tornadoes, and these could be on the EF2 type variety, or maybe even higher than that. So this is definitely a high impact day. It's something I'm going to be going live for on this program about 2 o'clock, probably 1, 2 o'clock time frame, and then through the evening time frame. So this is definitely a high impact event. So definitely stay tuned for the live coverage later on this afternoon. And that shifts off into the east. So all this moves into the east, going into the southeast, heading into Kentucky, into tomorrow time frame where they do have a slight risk. It becomes less of a hail threat and becomes more of a kind of a damaging wind, and then very strong potential tornadoes within this region as well. So areas of concern are into the portions of the southeast, getting into Tennessee, as well as into portions of Kentucky, could extend even into the Carolinas region. So let's really break down the dew points, because this is pretty crucial on where the initiation points of these storms actually start later on this afternoon. So right now, further south, you've got a pretty warm sector. You do have a cap and inversion over the Metroplex currently right now. A lot of the initiation is further south, not severe at the moment. You can see where the dew points is. Typically, you look for about 55 to see some of the moisture levels kind of increasing to move back in the picture. But as we have a warm front that's just stalled south of the Metroplex, will be lifting back up over the Metroplex. Those dew points rise into the mid 60s, if not near 70 degrees, as far north as Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas through Louisiana. This is your overall warm sector. As we get into the afternoon, this is about 2 o'clock. You see the time up above my head there. The dew points are right at crucial levels, mid 60s, low 60s. That is plenty of moisture. As moisture starts to return, I think supercells start to fire within this region, and that's the main concern ahead of this cold front that's going to be moving through. You can see the dew points cross pretty much southeastern Oklahoma and into Dallas, going into East Texas into the 10 o'clock time frame. It's probably going to be past Dallas-Fort Worth by then, heading into East Texas, and it definitely becomes a nocturnal threat into the overnight time frame, into the Arklatex, with very strong tornado potential within this warm sector. If we keep moving the needle into the 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning time frame, you can see where the storms are within the warm sector, right into the Louisiana area, into the Mississippi area, back in, eventually getting into portions of western Tennessee by then, as this will continue to shift off and becoming a morning threat as early as tomorrow morning and into Tennessee, going into Kentucky as well, with some isolated, embedded, very high winds, intense winds. Like I mentioned, it doesn't doesn't look like a more of a hail threat by then, but becomes more of a tornado and then damaging wind threat as this squall line will continue to move across. And then you got cooler air to follow on the backside. So let's really break down the details for you. So here's the overall radar, what it looks like this morning. You got that stalled frontal boundary just draped across portions of central Texas. These are kind of the non-severe type variety this morning, extended into Arkansas, going into portions of northern Mississippi, as well as into Alabama. But as we head into early morning time frame, as the warm front starts lifting from south to north over the Metroplex, heading towards Oklahoma, we are going to be seeing some isolated discrete supercells start to pop up. So the initiation, some of these could be, if it's able to erode and break the cap by then, they could become very large, high towering supercell thunderstorms and producing that potential large, if not some very large hail within this region. So it's more of a conditional threat in the early afternoon time frame, but it's also a very large hail potential if some of those were able to break the cap. 30 to 40% coverage within this sector. That's still the warm sector, and could be tornadic supercells as well. So this is where I'm going to start going live, doing live coverage, because we start to see initiation 3 o'clock. You start to see these little embedded isolated supercells start to pop up. These are probably going to be big time hail producers by then, and some tornadic supercells going to be approaching in and around the Metroplex, heading into or along the Red River, getting into southeastern Oklahoma. All this out ahead of it, and of course portions of Alabama into Mississippi. Those should not be severe at that time frame, at the 3 o'clock time frame. But the main squall line is going to be starting at around 5 o'clock. This is the main event where the cap is going to be completely eroding by then. This becomes more a damaging wind threat, probably 75-mile-per-hour winds within this region, and isolated embedded tornadoes and very large hail potential, as this nasty squall line will be moving across in the heart of rush hour traffic, parts of southeastern Oklahoma, into the heart of the Metroplex, getting all the way down into, say, the Austin area, all the way into central Texas, with that squall line moving across. So that's going to be a nasty evening, no question about it, as it continues to shift off into the east. So there's about 10 o'clock time frame. It should be getting into East Texas by then, southeastern Oklahoma, getting into the Arklatex regions. Those all will be severe at that time frame. So it's definitely a high impact event. Into the overnight hour, there's about 1 o'clock in the morning, as that squall line will be shifting out of Texas and headed into Louisiana, more into Arkansas by then, shifting to the north into Missouri, back into Illinois. Back behind it, it's very windy back behind that cold front. Chilly rain on the backside, as this is just all light to moderate rain in the cold sector into the overnight hours. So some of these areas could be picking up 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. But especially as you head into the Tennessee Valley through the Arklatex, these regions up here could easily pick up more than that. I mean, this is a very high impact event, with flash flooding is a huge concern within this region. And then as this moves across, you can see there's about 4 o'clock in the morning. It's still raining in Dallas, as that squall line will be moving across into portions getting near Louisiana, New Orleans by then. But then all the rain lifts further off into the north, and we're waiting for that snow to kind of start by Friday morning. And I think it does, as portions, there's snow starting to break out on the northwest side of there, and portions of Indiana, as that squall line will be continuing to kind of move across, and it all transfers to all snow back into Illinois, getting into Indiana, and heading up into portions of the mid-Atlantic, headed into the northeast. So let's take a look at the overall, as this shifts east. So this is the sector as it's right now. So we have the, kind of the embedded squall line moving through. These are just heavier rains. We had some tornadic spinouts into the overnight hours, but yes, just very heavy rain. That's because they had some severe weather yesterday, and that continues today. So as we move through the 1, 2, 3 o'clock time frame, as all the actions heading into Texas and central and Oklahoma, there's still going to be activity across into the southeast, with more of kind of very heavy rain as this moves across. It becomes more of a severe threat as we get into the morning time frame, heading into, with these squall lines moving across in portions of Georgia. Again, it becomes more of a kind of a damaging wind threat by then, as all the heavier rain will be shifting out of Kentucky, then heading into portions of Indiana and Ohio with snow just on the northwest side of there, as this will continue to race across through the Carolinas and up through into New Jersey. And then the snow really starts to crank as it gets up into portions of New England. Boston could be picking up a high impact event from this particular storm, maybe some of the biggest totals of the season they've seen so far, because they really haven't seen much. But all that lifts off into New England, the northern side of New England, as this will continue to drape across upstate New York, getting into Vermont and New Hampshire, and heading into the main time frame, going into tomorrow, late tomorrow night, going into Saturday morning time frame. So if we take a look at the NAM, there are a little bit uncertainties on the placement, especially of the snow, even this close. Even the mesoscale guidance, with these systems moving, 50, 60 miles an hour, the placement of that northwest side of the snow and with a cold sector still has uncertainty. So here's the latest NAM as it takes place over the next 84 hours. So this is the breakdown. So you have the system that came in from the west with all the heavier snows, and then that starts breaking out with some snows on the NAM model, actually produces some snow going into early tomorrow morning in portions of Kansas, and this lifts up into portions of Iowa and then cranks out into portions of Chicago. Remember, the HRRR had it much further south and did not produce the snow. So there's still uncertainty in just some of the shorter range, high resolution models, even this close out. We're still, only 24 hours of the event on the actual placement of that heavier snow. So the overall track of where this, northwest side of the snow track will make a huge difference on who actually gets the snow and basically who actually gets basically nothing. But the severe threat is all the same. So let's take a look at going into next week. So let's really break this thing down for you. We've been talking about this overall change for a while heading into March. We did have the stratospheric warming event back on the 16th of February, and it takes a couple of weeks to filter that colder air down through the mid latitudes and down through portions of Canada and to the United States. So if we take a look heading into next week, it's been cold and it continues to remain cold on the colder side for a good chunk of the West into British Columbia, back off the West Coast, with with the P&A being negative, it continues to remain negative for that region. But the difference this time, we do have that cold air building as the southeast ridge starts to come back, where we've seen that been alive and prevalent for most of the winter months. But as we get deeper, especially as we start week 2, really after the March 8th timeframe, we start to see that cold start to unbuckle. At least the below average temperatures for March standards starts to enter more further into the the south central plains region as we get past the 8th timeframe, headed into that week 2 of March, where it does turn colder, predominantly colder for much of the southern plains, and slowly starts to eat away of that southeast ridge. So we start to see well below average temperature anomalies really starting to build across the Intermountain West. Nevada stays really cold for almost the entire month of March. It's pretty insane how cold they are for such an extended period of time. But that cold air will finally enter portions of Kansas, enter Texas, enter Oklahoma, and this will modify and be shifting as it maximizes all the way down into the coastal regions. And then if we extend it and going beyond this, it'll just extend and get colder as we get towards the middle of March. So I'll definitely be talking about more of this after tomorrow's severe weather outbreak, today and tomorrow's severe weather outbreak. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely stay tuned for live coverage starting about 2 o'clock on this channel. So I'll see you then.